And then Lieutenant Colonel Odumegu Ojuku's father,
Yes.
Sir Louis Odumegu Ojuku, called it home.
Anytime you're ready.
Thank you.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Well, let's start now. I have to say, frankly, that I am profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to finally sit with you, Mr. Tony Elumelu, and have an interview with you.
Thank you, my brother.
You're most welcome, sir.
Thank
What
you.
was your mode of transportation from Lagos to Washington, D.C.?
Of course, I didn't come by sea. I came by air. I flew commercial jet to DC.
You're a man with very deep pockets, I gather. I would have expected you perhaps to have a personal jet.
I use my personal jet within Africa. I fly to Europe occasionally on it. But when I cross the Atlantic, I want to be in a white plane.
That is very interesting.
And my flight coming yesterday was quite turbulent.
Really?
And I just imagine what it would have been like if one was on a private jet.
Now talk to us about what brought you to Washington. You testified before the Senate today, correct?
You know, last year President Obama launched the Power Africa initiative. And my company, S. Odins, a Pan-African investment proprietary company, committed to invest $2.5 billion. We commenced the journey last year, November, with the takeover of the first power plant, where we invested $300 million, and a couple of other refurbishment and expansion programs going on currently. In connection with that, I was invited by the U.S. Senate subcommittee on Africa to testify before them today on the Electrify Africa Act as it relates to Power Africa. That's why I came to Washington.
How would you characterize the hearing? Did it meet your expectations? Was it worth your flying at short notice from Lagos to Washington?
When Senator Flake called me on Monday to invite me to appear before the Senate, to ask if I would be willing to appear before the Senate to testify, I saw it as an opportunity to further demonstrate my commitment and belief in the development of Africa. And so, talking about my expectations, the fact that the hearing held, and that the hearing is about the development of Africa, how to improve access to electricity on the continent, realizing the potential force and catalytic impact of power for the African continent. I would say that the hearing met my expectations. The fact that it held was very good and worth my flying so many hours, 6 plus 8, 14 hours to the US. It was worth it.
Any particular reason why government authorities in Nigeria have never been able to take care of that, really? Because I remember one time a General Olusegun Obasanjo coming to power back in 1999, promising the country and the continent that he was going to be the electricity president, that every Nigerian would have unfettered access. What happened?
I think President Obasanjo is alive to speak for himself, but I speak as an onlooker then, and I speak now as an investor in the power sector. Then we believe the president, the country embarked on a lot of IPPs, independent power plants, but the outcome is that we did not witness the level of power supply or access to electricity that we expected. And the current president, President Jonathan Goodluck Jonathan, I think that statement you made is not truly reflective of the current situation in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So when this government has been able to reform the power sector, the laws and the regulations in that space to make it attractive to allow private investors to come into that space,
Mm-hmm.
and went ahead further to privatize all the power plants in the country in a manner that is truly, truly transparent. So I would say that we're beginning to see a movement towards what we think, as talking now as a player in the sector,
Mm-hmm.
would ultimately lead to significant improvement in power supply in the country. So I see a progressive action by the government. So for us, for instance, we today own a power plant, and we are the first set of investors in the country to own power plants. It was a government monopoly before, but now it has changed. So I think the journey has commenced, but we need to take it to the next level. We need to sustain what has started and make sure that we're able to continue to nurture the power space, so that power access to electricity will come from increased generation, improved transmission, and efficient distribution of the power output.
What are some of the challenges that you have encountered so far in doing business in the energy sector in Nigeria and Africa as a continent?
I would say that for us, we have a three-tier strategic intent in growing our power business. First intent is to be embedded and strong in Nigeria. And second tier intent is East and West Africa. And the third tier intent is across Africa. So for Nigeria, where we have just started last year,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that for us, interestingly, so far so good. We have gas supply to our plant.
Mm-hmm.
We are into generations, and there's evacuation from our site. From the transmission company evacuates our electricity
Mm-hmm.
that we generate. Government pays within 45 days. There's partial risk guarantee. So I would say, so far so good. But the power plant that we acquired has capacity for 1,000 megawatts of electricity. We currently are producing 382. So there's room
Mm-hmm.
to do more. What we want to do is we're doing quite a lot already with General Electric and Symbion to make sure that we increase. By the end of this year, we'll take it up to over 700, and next year we'll come to 1,000. Now, we are anticipating that because of this increase in the output, we are hoping that the gas suppliers will be able to meet our gas demand. But for us, again, why it's difficult to talk about challenges, we also have investment in oil and gas sector, and we have our own oil assets that have huge gas reserves.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're starting production in April next month, so one of the things we want to do is to make sure that we use our own gas to fuel our power plant. So far so good.
Now, when it comes to Power Africa, in your opinion, what is the role of Congress, the United States Congress, in as far as that project is concerned?
I think Power Africa initiative of President Obama is to increase output by 10,000 megawatts, and also within a period of 5 years. But Africa is a continent that is going to be there beyond 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Africa is a continent that actually needs hundreds of thousands of megawatts of electricity and not just 10. So I would think that just like the AGOA Act, if we could have the U.S. Congress help pass this Electoral Africa Bill to give a kind of support that will make it last beyond a certain administration. So we shouldn't be talking of just 5 years, but they need to help to unlock and unleash, certain investment funds, capital that can come into this sector and to help the African private sector people who want to do more, or even the American private sector that want to invest in power sector in Africa. There's a lot that what the Congress is doing today can do to support. For me, Power Africa is a means to an end. The end point is to improve access to electricity on the continent. So beyond Power Africa, what I think the Congress is doing, and everyone is, how do we increase access to electricity? Power Africa is one of the routes to doing that. There could be other ways. So let's see a policy or a law that can help to unlock the resources and investments that can help to improve access to electricity in Africa, and even policies that can help to improve access to electricity in Africa.
Now, for such a project to succeed, how important is the issue of good governance? How important is the issue of unethical behavior?
The good governance and ethical ways of conducting business are key for success in any sector, in any field, not just about power in the power sector. And so it's something, it's a key ingredient that we must have in place for any initiative of this magnitude or this type to succeed. But let me say that today's Africa has tremendously improved. You see governance standards, especially in the private sector, because the power we're talking about here, is more the private sector's participation. Government's role should be to create an enabling environment, let the private sector come in. So we'll talk of corporate governance or governance, which should be, for me, I think from point of view of the private sector players who play in that space, how ethically sound are they in the way they conduct their businesses. And I would say that we have the level of governance, corporate governance on the continent has tremendously improved. So I do not, of course, even in America, there's still room for improvement in corporate governance. So that's not to say that there's 100% soundness in terms of corporate governance practices, but there's tremendous improvement from what it used to be. So the initiative, we need good governance for any good policy to work.
Now, Tony, unfortunately, time is not our best ally, but I still have one question at least to ask you. You are supposed to be the originator of the concept of Africapitalism. What exactly does it mean, and who inspired it? Because there is another fellow compatriot, a Dr. Shaka in New York City, who actually wrote a book called Capitalist Nigger.
Africapitalism is a private sector, a call on the private sector to invest long-term in key sectors of the African economy that have the potential and ability to create both economic prosperity and social wealth. It's not saying wait for one to make money before you begin to address social issues. It's a realization of certain factors. One, that the private sector has a key role to play in developing the continent. Private sector doesn't necessarily have to be African private sectors, but private sector, when American, African, private sectors operating in Africa, that they have a role to play in developing the continent. Two, that short-term investments don't pay off, especially when you want to develop the African continent, that we need to begin to look at long-term investment and in key sectors that are important. So if you look at the power we're talking about, you invest in power, you make money, so there's economic prosperity. But at the same time, you're helping to address the power or energy deficiency that we have on the continent. And when you address the energy deficiency, you're helping to create employment that you're helping to reduce poverty, you're helping to even address security issues, you're even helping to address food security challenges of the world. So it is a philosophy that I came up with based on my experience in business, doing business from when I ran a bank, from when I took over a distressed bank and turned around a distressed bank. I got to realize, to observe and see that indeed you can make money whilst you address society's challenges, and that long-term investment actually helps to do most of these things, to help to develop, because we started with a little amount of money, but we were long-term in orientation. And because we were long-term in orientation, we did not believe in short-term gains, and that helped us to invest. Because we invested long-term, we saw how the investment helped us to make money, as well as address a lot of issues on employment, creating access to finance, helping to develop local areas because of the economic activity we were generating in those communities. So I felt that if we could preach this and have private sector players on the continent adopt this, believe in it, and practice it, that a lot more will come out of it. And so that is the whole genesis and origin of Afro-capitalism. Now, the issue of origin, whether somebody wrote about capitalism, what do you call it?
Capitalist nigger.
Capitalist nigger. I've not read it.
I see.
I've not read it, but as original as I've explained.
What about the single most important decision that you have ever made as a businessman, and the single most regrettable decision? In 10 seconds.
Yes. So the decision I made, I think, was when we decided to acquire a distressed bank. We had the opportunity to acquire a bank that was not distressed, because we agreed. I put some professionals together to acquire a bank. We wanted to increase investment, to invest in a bank. And so the option was between acquiring a distressed bank or a going concern.
UBA?
No, not UBA. First was Standard Trust Bank.
I see.
And in the history of our banking sector in the country, no group of people had ever acquired a distressed bank. So it was like we were crazy.
I see.
But we saw potential, and we felt, let's acquire this, turn it around, cheaper to do, and than going to a going concern. And you spend more, you waste more money, you spend more money to do so. So yes, I would say that was a turning point decision that we made. It could have been, if it didn't go well, it would have been bad, but it went well. And so that led to the greater successes that we recorded in that space. Now,
single most regrettable decision?
But the truth is, you hardly find a leader who does not have who has not made bad decisions. I think one was when we acquired United Bank for Africa, or when the combination between UBA and Standard Trust Bank occurred. We had enough interest in United Bank of Africa to run two banks. We had Standard Trust Bank acquiring significant interest in United Bank of Africa. I was the CEO of Standard Trust Bank. We merged United Bank of Africa and Standard Trust Bank. Hindsight, would I have done so? Maybe not. Maybe I would have allowed Standard Trust Bank to run. I would have gone to UBA to run UBA. Because when the merger occurred, bringing the two banks together cost us a lot. In terms of market positioning, Standard Trust Bank was the 5th largest bank in the country at the time. United Bank of Africa was the 3rd largest bank. Bringing the two meant we created room for another player to come into that space. So maybe we shouldn't have done so. And two, the integration stress of merging a 60-something-year-old bank with a 10-year-old bank, the cultural challenges were too much. So I thought, hindsight. But then there were also benefits of making the decision at the time.
Well, Mr. Tony Elumelu. It was a pleasure, of course, to have you here on the set in Washington. But we hope that the next time you will make some adequate time. And frankly, come and participate in our live program, Straight Talk Africa.
It will be my pleasure to do so, and thanks so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.